Well, hi folks. Trust everybody's fine on this Thursday, June 25th, 2020. A real nice sunny day on Vancouver Island. It's supposed to reach some high temperatures, which is good. And I'm sort of looking back at these first 6 months, and I think if anybody's been paying attention, one thing is really, really clear. I think one has to really sort of get yourself set up to look after yourself. I'm seeing right now masks are everywhere. And when you go back in the timeline, let's go back, say, to December. There were a lot of people sick. They used to come into the coffee shop and terrible coughs, couldn't get rid of this thing. Even some of our staff experienced the same thing. And towards the end of December, we sort of learned that there was something funny going on in China, something serious. They were welding people in their apartments, locking places down, locking down more people than the population of Canada. So one knew there was something up. We had a connection with the yacht manufacturer in China, and they were all shut down. Business was all shutting down. And I think as we sort of started talking about it back then and researching to see what was going on, our manager was from Nanjing, so she had some communication with her family back there as well. And we sort of figured and decided that it could be really serious. Especially when you looked at the hospitals in China being overwhelmed and whatever. So the idea of masks, like right away, our manager being from China, she suggested masks as well, that everybody should be wearing them like right now. And of course everybody laughed at that idea. Everybody scoffed at the idea, including our governments. When governments should have reacted, or been proactive, they didn't. They sat on their hands and waited and waited and waited. An interesting thing is, much of North America's military intelligence were in on this thing. They knew something was happening, and a lot of the military were getting prepared. A lot of military members were already sort of self-isolating, just in case there was something crazy going on. And of course, our governments must have known that as well, but they just didn't. They just sat around. And so it's interesting as you look at that. The World Health Organization took over the show. And of course, I don't have to repeat all their blunders. And when I'm talking right now, it's no disrespect to the people. They're probably all very nice people. But they just really made mistake after mistake after mistake. And people say, well, it's not a mistake, they didn't know what they were doing. Exactly. Here we had people telling us what to do, and they didn't know what they were doing. So they were giving us false information. And of course, our parrots with microphones, AKA national news media in North America, they were just parroting the same stuff as they were getting from the WHO. And I remember talking to people about getting ready to do some shopping in advance. And again, they were prepared to buy me a tin hat. They thought I was nuts, gone senile or what have you. And so we didn't pay any attention to that. We just went and we always stock up. Anybody living on the Pacific Northwest, the west coast of North America, we're in one of the most active, one of the most dangerous areas of the Ring of Fire. And so we already know that at any given time we could have a major disaster, earthquake, tidal wave, that sort of thing. So the people who are thinking, try to be as best prepared as they can. So we just had to top up some things. And everybody we mentioned it to, well, they didn't do that until all of a sudden the lockdown came in. People were staying at home, having to use their own toilet paper, not the companies, and they realized, hey, we're going to have a shortage here. And by that time it was sold out. Maybe you remember that. Going down the aisles and everything gone. Because people waited too long. And I think we will do the same thing again. No, undoubtedly, the parrots are with mics are talking about the second wave. Governments are talking about it. Everybody's pointing at Florida and Arizona, major cases happening. The WHO is saying there's major spikes worldwide. We've got to be prepared. So be prepared for another lockdown or something else stupid. And but if you have your pantry stocked up, your supply stocked up, and they do pull that, well, at least you don't have to worry about that. And again, living in the Pacific Northwest, you should always have that done. One should be able to look after yourself for 6 months. They tell you 2 weeks, forget that, 6 months. You know, if we had when we're sitting on the corner waiting, we're 320 odd years into the last megaquake. That happens about every 300 years, give or take. So we're just on the precipice of that. So if you survive that, you want to have things available to look after yourself, your medications, all that sort of thing that could get you through 6 months. And it just sort of common sense. And I think communities should do that as well. Your neighborhood, all you have to look is what happened in Seattle. It's happening in Toronto. They've at City Hall, I'm not sure if they're still there, but they had a bunch of people put a bunch of tents in at the square by City Hall and have it a no-go zone for people trying to report on it. Sort of interesting. You know, we have, these are the people we've elected to sort of look after us. And again, nothing personal to these people. They're probably all very nice people. But the mayor in Seattle couldn't find her ass with both hands. Look at the disaster she's in. I mean, all she was talking about a summer of love and telling the president to stay in his bunker. And you see where it's got her. Scary. So what you have to think about, what if that happened in your community? See, another crazy thing, they let people out of jail. Courts were down, so people who had major charges weren't being heard. They weren't keeping them in custody because they were worried about this virus. So they're letting the criminals out. In cities, they were especially in the States, they were letting assholes run wild, ordering the police departments to stand down. Now, what if that happened in your community? Can you look after yourself? What if the police aren't there? What are you going to do if they come down your street with AK-47s? And in Canada, everybody's supposed to hand their guns back. We don't have guns. So if someone comes up your walkway with an AK-47 and you've got your golf club, who wins? It's sort of crazy. So I'm saying families and communities, neighborhoods should have a plan. You know, on this part of the island where I live, there's ex-Navy officer runs the emergency services. So there's some logical thinking and planning that goes on there. But in a lot of communities, you don't. They're waiting for the federal government. And I mean, our Prime Minister barricaded himself in, shut down Parliament, handed out bags of money every morning off his doorstep, and there was just really no leadership. All the way on down, there was no real leadership, except we were told to stay home. And the unelected people from WHO, Tedros and his accomplices were running the show. They were telling governments what to do. And, well, I don't have to, you just have to look back over the 6 months. Now, if you're awake and paying attention, you could see for yourself that the chaos that it caused. And, a lot of people think that this was not an accident. It was a good emergency that wasn't there, but they could take advantage of it and control people a bit more. So you have to control your own life. You have to take charge. And don't leave it to governments. Don't leave it to governments to that time to tell you what to do. Because what they were telling us to do in the beginning was wrong. They have since changed their minds a couple of times. All the scenarios they've punched down the pike were wrong. And they say, well, this was new, we didn't know what the hell was going on. And it's obvious. It was obvious. We're now, everybody is talking about the economy bouncing back. Well, I'll tell you something. If it bounces back to where it was, I'll eat this camera because I'll be totally surprised. We're in for a whole lot of hurt. And you got to think, it was not just your country, your province, your state, your city. It was the Western world. The Western world. And they've done this once. I can see them doing it again. And all those crazies that were on the streets doing the stupid stuff, they're still out there, especially in the States. There's some of those clowns up in Canada as well. And that's the scary part. Now, they used a lot of well-meaning people as fools to go marching under a banner that is non-existent, that they just hijacked. You can talk to any thinking person of color, any African American, or whatever the political term is right now, who thinks, who knows what's going on, they'll tell you that's not their organization. That's a Soros-controlled craziness thing. That's an Antifa is connected to so many terrorist things around the world. And when you look at how they're operating the same as what happened in Yugoslavia. Canada still has military people over in Kosovo. I mean, they tore that country in half, using the same crazy techniques as that they're using in Seattle, using throughout the States. Tearing down statues, blowing things up, looting, rioting, and all under using all the poor fools who really think they're marching for something serious as shields, as clowns. And I think it's a lot of those people who have marched, and if you're one of you sit back thinking, you're going to realize how badly used you were. I mean, your intentions may have been good, but you were marching for nothing, and you were just marching in a crazy manner. And there's a lot of stats that can sort of answer that. And again, so that this morning, on a Sunday morning, it's really apparent. One has to sort of look after oneself and be prepared as best you can. And when elections come, really pay attention who you're voting for. Just because they're cute, they're good looking, and they glib and they say the right things and they dodge and dance on rice paper, ask them the serious questions. Ask them serious questions and pay attention. And whether there's any hope left in that, I'm not sure. But we really, in the Western world, had a group of weak leaders. Whatever you think of Trump, and I know most people lose their underwear when you mention that name because they don't like him. And they can't really say what they don't like about him, but what he has done, he has done the Wizard of Oz thing. He has pulled back the curtain to show you how rotten everything really is. He has pulled back that curtain. And if all you've been watching is CNN and the parrots, the other mainstream media with microphones, just regurgitating garbage, well, maybe you don't realize that. But it's, you just look at the Democratic Party, how it has been taken over by hooligans. I mean, it's scary stuff. And for those who think, well, no, if we get rid of Trump, everything is going to be good. You get rid of Trump, you'll wait till the boots come down on you. Because we ain't seen nothing yet. In Canada, I'm not sure who we have to sort of take the reins and do that for us. Nobody's coming to the forefront. We're mired in our own bureaucratic virus, where everything is sort of politically correct and so out to lunch that it's scary. And if you think it's not out to lunch, well, just think of this. liquor stores and pot shops were deemed essential services. They were the essential ones. Keep everybody happy. You know, I mean, where governments, and this is right from local, municipal, all the way on through to the federal, where people get their ideas, I don't know. And if you have a small business, you've got to really get yourself prepared. Because these clowns start telling you how to operate your business, who's essential, who's non-essential, what hours you can do, what you can do, and they haven't got a clue themselves. Most of them have never started a small business. Most of them don't have a clue. I was listening to a commercial by the Royal Bank today, that if you're a small business, we're here to help you. Like hell, they're here to help them. The banks are here to help themselves make more service fees. They create nothing but debt and confusion. Sure, they have a little blanket how they want to have businesses run, but if you don't fit into what they want to do, and think of it, there's some young twerps who are sort of being business consultants, investments consultants. They haven't got a clue. I remember a lady telling me she went to the bank and her consultant said, "Wow, you have more money in the bank than I have. You own your own home. You got all this money. You should let me sit down and show you how you can really look after that money." And she thought to herself, "Wait a minute. You just told me you have less money in the bank than I do. You don't own your own home, and yet you want to manage my finances." That's the banks for you. So they're ingenuous as hell. So the bankers are not your friend. Unless you're into that little box, where they sort of pull your string, control what you do, lend you some money, get you in debt, pull this back. And it's interesting. You know, I think that's why you're going to see a lot of small businesses say the hell with it, because a small business is different than a big corporation. They don't all fit in that banker's slot. And when you look at this, when you just follow those bankers back to where the real money is, that's the whole grist of our problem. These people trying to set the plan to control everything. And it's not just me saying that. There's a lot of folks out there. As always, I'll put some links in the description period, a portion of this after. And we've set up on BitChute as well. I'll give you our link to BitChute, because the censoring is getting crazier and crazier. And a lot of cool people who have opened up a lot of information are gone. They're just sort of wiping them clean off Twitter, off Google, off YouTube, off Facebook. And it's totally interesting. Anyway, that's I guess that's enough for now. It's a long one here this morning, but look after yourself. Get yourself prepared. Don't wait for the next panic buying rush. Make sure you have your essentials that you need. Stock up for 6 months. You can always rotate it. I mean, it's just common sense to do that. If you live in the cities, if it keeps going the way it is, I feel sorry for folks living in the cities right now. You know, in Coeur d'Alene, the clowns were going to small towns raising hell. You can go and look for that video. The whole community, and of course in the States they still have their weapons, but the whole city was lined with people with enough things to look after themselves, and told us. And as these Antifa clowns came through, guys, enjoy our city, have fun, enjoy the place. But if you have ulterior motives, we're ready for you. And those people just didn't come into the town. They didn't come down. I know they did that in Alberta, in a small town in Alberta as well. Went in from Calgary to educate people on racism. And that's another myth. If you're dancing and using that parroted term, systemic racism, well, give your head a shake and really think about it. Give your head a shake and really think about it. If you're parroting white privilege, think about it. If you're marching, carrying a sign, peace, justice, can't breathe, all that sort of horseshit, and you see what's going on all around you, and that in those marches, give your head a shake. You're just being used as a tool. You're being played a fool as they use you for a tool. And when you really stand back, I'll put a link onto to a rapper who tells it better than I do. If you don't believe that that's all bullshit you're marching for, listen to him. Maybe he's more of your generation, and you'll listen to that. Anyway, bye for now. Have a good one. It looks like we're going to have a nice weekend coming up, and we'll see you again.